For 40 years, one name has pretty much owned the personal computer. Today, we're going to chart the incredible, decades-long journey of Microsoft Windows. This is an operating system that didn't just run on our computers. It literally shaped how we think about the digital world. So let's just dive right into this amazing story of evolution, of cutthroat competition, and constant reinvention. We're going to see how this simple idea, just putting little graphical windows on a screen, grew into the incredibly complex system that, well, billions of us use every single day. All right, so our story kicks off way back in the early 1980s. And you have to picture it. Computers were powerful, for sure, but they were not what you'd call friendly. Using one meant you were just staring at a black screen, typing in these cryptic commands. No icons, no mouse, just that blinking cursor in a sea of text. So Microsoft's big idea, which they released in 1985, was to put a friendly, graphical face on top of that old text-based MS-DOS. I mean, think of it like a visual layer, right? Instead of typing commands, you could now point and click inside these new boxes called, you guessed it, Windows. This was a huge deal, a direct shot at what competitors like Apple were doing with their graphical interfaces. But it was not an overnight success, far from it. Windows 1.0 and 2.0, they really struggled to catch on. The windows couldn't even overlap. They were tiled right next to each other on the screen, which just felt incredibly limited. It was a really interesting idea for sure, but it just hadn't found its groove yet. And then the 1990s hit. And this was the decade where everything, and I mean everything, changed. With two absolutely pivotal releases, Microsoft didn't just get in the race for the desktop. It started to lap the entire field. So Windows 3.0 was the first real smash hit. It sold millions, and it proved once and for all that a graphical interface on PCs was the future. Then Windows 3.1 came along and polished that experience. But it was the 1995 release, launched with this insane marketing blitz using the Rolling Stones' Start Me Up, that truly cemented Windows' place in history. Think about it. Windows 95 introduced concepts that are still totally fundamental to how we use computers. The Start menu, it gave people one simple, easy-to-find place for everything. The taskbar let you see what was running and just switch between things instantly. These weren't just little features, they were revolutionary ideas that finally made the PC feel intuitive, opening the floodgates for millions of new users. And the success of Windows 95 and everything that followed, it was just staggering. The result? Well, you can see it. To this very day, Windows commands the vast majority of the desktop market, a dominance that really started right here in the mid-90s. But here's where the story gets really interesting. To understand how Microsoft kept this lead, we have to look behind the curtain, where this fascinating battle was going on. See, for years, Microsoft wasn't just making one version of Windows. They were actually developing two completely different product lines at the same time. On one side, you had the super popular consumer line. That's your Windows 95, 98, and Me. These were all built on that old, creaky MS-DOS foundation, and they were, let's be honest, notoriously prone to crashing. But then, on the other side, you had the Windows NT line, built from the ground up for businesses. It was incredibly stable, super secure, but it just wasn't designed for us regular home users. And the problems with that consumer line, they really came to a head in the year 2000 with Windows Me, the Millennium Edition. It was just plagued with instability. It was widely hated by critics. And this quote from PC World pretty much says it all. It was so clear that the old DOS-based way of doing things had hit a total dead end. So Microsoft made a historic call. They basically said, okay, let's take the powerful, stable engine from our business software, that's the NT kernel, and let's merge it with the friendly interface and all the fun features from our home versions. And the result? Windows XP, an operating system that was both super easy to use and totally rock solid. And boy, did it go on to dominate the next decade. The XP era was long and, for the most part, really stable. But its follow-up, Windows Vista, well, that was a serious misstep. It got hammered by critics for being slow and for its constant annoying security pop-ups. But to their credit, Microsoft learned its lesson. They released Windows 7 just a few years later. It basically took the Vista formula, kept the modern look, but made it fast and reliable. And you guessed it, it became another massive success. But just when Windows seemed totally unbeatable on the desktop, the entire world of computing started to shift under its feet. The smartphone and the tablet arrived, And suddenly, the mouse and keyboard were no longer the only way to do things. Microsoft had been caught completely off guard. So what was Microsoft's answer? It was its most radical reinvention ever: Windows 8. They basically threw out the classic desktop. They replaced the start menu with this vibrant, full-screen grid of live tiles that were totally designed for touch. It was a huge, ambitious bet on a future where every single screen was a touchscreen. The only problem was, most of us weren't living in that future yet. For the hundreds of millions of people still using a good old-fashioned mouse and keyboard, the changes were jarring, they were confusing. And getting rid of the start button? Oh man, that caused a huge backlash. So, once again, Microsoft listened, and Windows 10 was, frankly, a masterful course correction. It brought back the start menu we all loved, but it cleverly integrated those live tiles from Windows 8 right into it. It let the new apps run in normal desktop windows, creating this hybrid system that just worked beautifully, whether you were using touch or a mouse. It really felt like the best of both worlds. And that brings us to today. I mean, what a journey, right? From a simple Slum shell on top of DOS to the complex, service-driven OS of today. It's been remarkable. But the world is changing again. AI and cloud computing are taking over. And it leaves us with one final fascinating question to think about. After 40 years, what will our next window to the world actually look like?